Hello and welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to map out a highly complex and pretty opaque financial and governance structure connecting Ealing Council, Hounslow Council, and the Gunnersbury Estate CIC. We're calling it the Gunnersbury Web. Let's get straight into it because what we found raises some absolutely serious questions about transparency, taxpayer money, and the true cost of commercializing our public green spaces. To understand exactly how this web was spun, we really have to start with a legal mechanism known as the TECL exemption. Essentially, it's a legal loophole. It allows public bodies, like local councils, to award work without going through an open competitive tender process. But there is a very strict condition attached to this. The council must control that external body as if it were its own internal department. So under this TECL-style arrangement, Gunnersbury Park was handed over to the CIC for a peppercorn rent of literally just £1. Legally speaking, the councils were supposed to maintain a controlling stake to justify this handover.
But when you look at the reality of Gunnersbury on the ground, a massive red flag appears. The TECL requirement demands clear council control, right? While the Gunnersbury reality paints a completely different picture. Right now, there are only two council representatives sitting as trustees, Councillor Ajmer Grewal from Hounslow and Councillor Kim Nagpal from Ealing. Having just 2 out of 8 trustees simply does not look like council control. So if the fundamental legal requirement for handing over the park without a tender is this highly questionable, we really have to ask who is actually steering the ship here.
And the overlap of personnel makes the whole situation even more tangled. Consider Councillor Salman Shaheen, for example. He was previously on the CIC and Connected Charities Board. Now, what's really troubling about this overlap is that Councillor Shaheen was, and still is, the cabinet member in charge of parks at Hounslow Council. When the very people tasked with overseeing and protecting our public parks are sitting on the boards of the private entities exploiting them, the lines of accountability become incredibly blurred.
Okay, let's talk about the money, because the numbers here are frankly staggering. £2,490,247. According to public accounts, that is the total turnover the CIC generated from all sources in 2025, with nearly £2.5 million flowing into this organization in a single year from festivals and taxes. Taxpayers are completely justified in asking, where exactly are these millions going?
But here is where the financial web gets incredibly murky. Despite that massive turnover of nearly £2.5 million, the CIC actually reported an operating loss of £81,133 for the 2025 financial year. How does an organisation given a massive public park for a £1 rent, generating millions in revenue, still manage to operate at a loss?
The answer might just lie in this rather bizarre taxpayer funding loop. In a public video, the CIC's own CEO laid out this arrangement. Ealing and Hounslow councils effectively pump around £500,000 of council tax funding into the CIC every single year. But wait, it actually gets stranger. Out of that public funding, the CIC then pays around £300,000 straight back to Ealing Council for basic services like grass cutting and bin collection.
And those public subsidies, well, they don't stop at cash. A Freedom of Information request to the Ministry of Justice reveals that the CIC also benefits from roughly 2,700 hours of free, unpaid labor every single year through community payback schemes. So, just to recap, they have millions in revenue, massive council tax subsidies, and thousands of hours of free labor.
Yet the physical state of historic buildings in the park tells a completely different story. Despite all those millions flowing through the Gunnersbury Web, vital heritage assets like Potomac Tower are completely derelict.
Which begs a pretty crucial question. Why aren't the councils auditing whether the CIC is meeting its maintenance obligations? While most buildings aren't in the CIC's lease, Potomac Tower explicitly is. The CIC's maintenance agreement states they should be spending £5,500 every single year just on the doors and windows of this specific tower. Yet it is rotting away with literally no doors or windows at all. If turnover has been over £2 million in recent years, why are these buildings derelict? Where is the money going, and where is the transparency?
Well, public records from Companies House shed a bit of light on who is actually profiting from this web. Underneath the CIC sits a chain of private events contractors, and unlike the CIC, their finances are looking incredibly healthy. Vanguardia shows a turnover of over £6.1 million with a £70,000 profit. RBA Acoustics boasts nearly £900,000 in net assets, Greengage holds £1.845 million in current assets, and Event Umbrella is sitting on over £765,000 in reserves. So, the private festival contractor
sectors are thriving, while the taxpayers' subsidized CIC operates at a loss and historic park buildings crumble. Crucially, Companies House accounts do not show how much of the CIC's money is actually going to these festival suppliers. Naturally, residents have tried to get answers to all of this, but they're met with a deeply frustrating Catch-22 information blackout. The CIC claims it is gagged by Clause 22 of its lease, completely forbidding it from answering Freedom of Information requests, and tells residents to ask the councils instead. The councils then turn around and send the residents right back to the CIC. It's a perfect bureaucratic loop designed to ensure information is never actually provided. Why is there so much secrecy?
And unfortunately, it gets worse. An FOI disclosure from Ealing Council reveals that public money is actively being used to share legal costs between the councils and the CIC. Let that sink in. They're using taxpayer money to fund legal disputes against the very taxpayers and residents who are simply asking for transparency and legal compliance.
While these legal walls go up, the physical walls literally come down on the community. Large areas of public parkland are completely fenced off. Heavy machinery and massive trucks tear up the green space, effectively turning a public amenity into an industrial construction site all summer, accompanied by 90-decibel bass that physically shakes local family homes. The environmental and social damage here is vast. Beautiful, tree-lined areas are repurposed as makeshift car parks. Protected bat species living in the park are severely threatened by the industrial lights and noise. And alongside these events, locals report a major spike in criminal activity, including drug use, as well as car break-ins and thefts from local shops. Despite this undeniable damage, some politicians openly support the CIC's agenda. Former Labour and current Green Party councillor Guy Lambert even publicly accused residents online of just wanting the park for locals only. Let's be totally clear, that is nonsense. The taxpayers footing the bill for this park simply want balance, basic transparency, and the protection of their local environment. Transparency is particularly lacking when it comes to the extreme noise. The acoustic consultants, Vanguardia and RBA Acoustics, monitor the noise levels and report directly to Hounslow Council's licensing enforcement, specifically Senior Principal Regulatory Officer Stephen Monders. But there is a massive impartiality conflict here. These consultants are actually paid by the CIC. Meanwhile, FOI requests for the raw noise data have been repeatedly denied to residents, making it absolutely impossible to check if the enforcement is truly impartial.
And now, the CIC is pushing for even more. Planning Application P 2025-3274 demands 5 straight years featuring 115 days of festivals with even louder 90-decibel bass limits. Why on earth does the CIC need this massive expansion? Especially when, speaking at the Chiswick Area Forum in September 2025, the CIC's own CEO admitted this financial model has never stacked up.
So, who exactly will decide on this massive new planning application? Well, the chair of the Hounslow Planning Committee is Councillor Preetam Grewal. His wife is Councillor Ajmer Grewal, who, as we established earlier alongside Councillor Kim Nagpal, is one of the very few council trustees actually sitting on the CIC. This is a staggering conflict of interest. Are Hounslow and Ealing sufficiently disconnected from the CIC to judge their planning needs independently?
The evidence suggests the decision might already be a done deal. Residents recently received a council leaflet confirming that Ealing is actively redesigning Pope's Lane, using public taxpayer money specifically to accommodate these major commercial events in the park.
So the crucial point we have to ask is this: are taxpayers secretly funding these private festivals? Why are massive, publicly funded road changes happening before the planning application is even officially granted? Does this suggest the application is predetermined? And are the hundreds of desperate objections from local charities, residents associations, schools, the police, local businesses, and even an MP just being completely ignored?
We'll conclude this explainer with a necessary disclaimer. All information relied upon today is drawn directly from public video, Companies House records, and FOI disclosures. The councils and the CIC are openly invited to provide any contrary evidence or corrections, but until they do, we are left to wonder. What is the true cost of the secrecy, and who is really benefiting from the Gunnersbury Web? Thank you for watching.